Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Zishan Nasir and I would like to welcome you all on the podcast of ISRA. Well, world has become the place where the conflicts are going on. For that, we do have one of the most distinguished guests and most concerned person to talk about it. We have Andreea Karadeli with us. She has done the PhD in security and intelligence. Having said that, she has a vast experience in working with the different organizations like European Union, NATO and UN. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Ma'am, I would like you to introduce a bit to our audience so then we can open up the discussion. Yeah.
Let me begin by thanking you for the invitation and also this welcoming workshop that I'm participating into. It's always a pleasure and a great honor to be in Pakistan. I love the country and I love the people. You're very welcoming and you really know how to receive guests. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm an assistant professor in security studies, the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. So I come from a very long way because we're just at the border with Mexico. I'm originally from Romania. I'm Eastern European, so I'm that kind of directly involved in one or another in the current crisis that we face there with Russia-Ukraine war. I consider myself a very international person, like more of an international identity, global identity. That I have.
Well, ma'am, don't you think even the academic research institute, they have their own pick and choose? There are some conflicts that many international institutions tend to avoid discussing. And there are many other, issues which they would like to, discuss depending on their interests. So what you talk about, like, for example, if we talk about the people of Gaza, there is no one is talking about them. So what should you say about it?
I actually must say that I've been one of the first people back in my college as well who organized a discussion on Gaza when the war started in October 2023. As I was teaching my class in global security to master students, and I do have a habit of bringing guest speakers into the discussion. Once the war started, I invited 3 speakers. One of them was actually from Pakistan that provided very different perspectives, because I guess the problem that we're facing is the fact, like in all those conflicts, disregard where it is that we are struggling in hearing ourselves speaking instead of hearing the others as well. We try to make our own voices, our own perspectives louder instead of, keeping an ear to what the other is saying. You don't have to agree with anything. You just have to listen, to be able to listen so that you try to understand. It's the first step towards trying to understand, right? And after you understand, then you can actually have a conversation.
True.
Now, when it comes to the perspective of the academic institutions, it really depends. I consider myself lucky for being part of the American academic system, where I've definitely witnessed a lot of academic freedom. So in my classroom, in my writings, I'm allowed to speak my voice out and to prove through research what the situation is. And I'm very proud of the fact that I do promote in my classes this critical thinking. So when it comes to, I actually had a class when I talked a few weeks ago, I draw a comparison between the Ukraine-Russia war and the Hamas-Israel war. And I actually had a guest speaker from Ukraine, a professor from Ukraine, who pulled up the deeds of both sides, because no side in any of those conflicts is pure or is without mistake, right? Mm. So once we agree that mistakes have been done on both sides in each of these conflicts, we can sit down, and once we try to understand what the other is saying, we can actually start having a conversation. And as you just mentioned in the beginning, that's everything that we need to start with.
Yeah.
Like communicating.
Andreea, how do you see the role of United Nations in it? Because their primarily responsibility is to maintain the peace in, certain areas where the conflicts are going on, and how we can justify their lavish expenditures where there is no output from them. So what you have to say about it?
I believe you found the wrong person to talk about this because in the past years, and it's not just about conflict, it's about all the hazards, because obviously US has all hazards perspective that I do teach in my class as well. In the past years, we've witnessed the pillars of our society trembling and being put to the ground, just as our buildings were put to the ground by flooding or earthquakes, right? It's the same thing. It's just physical reality and the other side of it, right? And one of those pillars, and by saying pillars, I'm talking about, of course, governmental institutions, education, and all the agencies, institutions, systems that we have formed so far or we have built our societies on so far. And want it or not, the world is changing. And if we're ready for this doesn't even matter. If we can adapt to this doesn't matter either. You just have to face it and go with it. One of these institutions that it doesn't have a place anymore in the same way it had before, because obviously hasn't adapted to the reality of the ground, and it does have, unfortunately, maybe not because of the institution itself, but because of a variety of reasons, we all have double standards, right? We all show double standards. So I believe we do need different types of agencies, different types of institutions. UN should either change its perspective, should redefine its role, or it would eventually get lost on the way, like all other institutions that that are still trying to keep themselves alive.
All right. As someone who kept an eye on the on the different conflicts going on in the world, I would like to know from you that what you think, what is the role of Pakistan at this point of a time? We have alliance with the US, but we are, kind of inclined towards China. So what you have to say about it, like as an expert of someone who is watching the conflicts are going on and all that stuff. So what do you think on the stand of Pakistan right now?
As a personal perspective, disclaimer, I'm not speaking on behalf of any of the institutions I represent or university, but on my personal perspective is that as the world is changing, right, the countries that have been considered less powerful, I would say, or not having as much power or as much of a heavy word to say in the beginning, would have the most of it, would have the hardest word to be said, right? And I believe Pakistan is one of them. We see countries like Turkey becoming a regional power, right? We see countries that have been changing their perspective, their look at the world, and again, Pakistan is one of them. And I guess what we need to do, and the way I'm looking at it, is the fact that we need history to learn from our mistakes, and we also need to be able to forecast and kind of see ahead of time what's going to happen, so that we decide our role and our position correctly, so that we are on the wrong side. We're not on the wrong side. But I believe the world that is building right now is not going to be a world of sides. It's going to be a world of multipolarity instead.
Well, definitely. What are the implications of rising powers for the established international order and national security dynamics? What do you think about it?
I think the rising powers are providing a very different perspectives to the traditional look at security. We do live in a realist world, and I know people would argue, a lot of people, even scholars in my field would argue differently, but I believe we're still living in a realist world. And obviously wars are still dictating. The difference is that the wars that we used to know before have changed, right? The contemporary war is very different. And I was just mentioning in a session before, when people were talking about information warfare and hybrid warfare, I was trying to make them understand that there's no such thing anymore. NATO has changed the concept. We're talking about cognitive warfare, right? So, and it's not a country necessarily. It's an institution, right, that has brought something up, something new, and realized that the old understanding of it is not the same anymore. It's not suitable anymore. So I guess those new rising powers, and I'm going to give again the example of Turkey, because when it comes to security, look at its defense industry, right? The investment that has been done in the defense industry and the way it has changed. If we just give the examples of drones, right? The Turkish drones have definitely changed the way conflicts had looked like in Libya, in Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
So they definitely have and will have a heavier words to say in the future.
Well, moving towards the next question, I would like you to tell us that, do you think that economical paranoia actually, tends to make their leaders of the countries to make decisions in that impactful way? Like, for example, if we talk about Pakistan, if we are at that point of a time where our economical strong, so you think that we can raise the voice in the United Nations or other institutions? Our voice can be that powerful if we have that, economical power in the back here?
Of course, you can't speak of a state without deleting completely the economical side of it, right? And again, it's a realist perspective, right? We used to think that the power of a state comes from its military, right? Yeah, the power of a state comes from its military and its economy as well. Because a good economy gives you a lot of more freedom to choose, more independence, right? But I guess the way we're moving forward, we have to understand that we no longer live in a world of speaking for ourselves. We live in a more interconnected world. So whatever is going wrong in your economy is not just in yours. It actually, if you witness it in all economies, but at different scales, depending on how developed that economy is, right? So if there's something that needs to be thought differently, it's the fact that as more interconnected we get, more of those crises, including the economical one, become more transboundary. So those transboundary crises need transboundary solutions, right? Need solutions that involve not just one country, but several countries.
Exactly, because as you said that the world has become the global village. I can definitely understand, and my question was related to that because we can see the polarization, and due to that we do have a lot of conflicts going on in the world, and the countries are related to that are actually become more stubborn with the passage of time. So do you think that actually hurt worldwidely, or what should be the solution for it?
I'll give you a new word. It's called gloal.
Mm-hmm.
So you have, yes, the global village that you're referring to, but you also have the context, the local as much influencing the life as the global is. So I guess what we need to start understanding, defining and applying is this global context. Because see what has happened with the floods in Pakistan, right? It wasn't just here. You would see it in other parts of the world. And maybe cooperation, collaboration might help for this not to happen again, or if it happens, for a better management of the crisis. So local would be the moving forward. That's what I would say from a very scholarly but academic perspective, because I don't consider myself a fully academic person. I believe the academia, staying in the office, writing papers, is not doing its job. We need the world where academia is working with practitioners, is working with policymakers, so that they can actually benefit the communities. And at my university, my department is a part of the School of Interdisciplinary Studies and Community Engagement. And we believe that our role is also, one of the main roles that we have is to be involved in our communities. And community is the local one, but also the global one, right? So that's what would eventually make a change.
Definitely. When we talk about the global village or global, as you said, we need to have a good diplomacy art for that. And do you think that good diplomatic relationships with other countries can actually play a major role in security posture of the country?
Define good diplomatic relations.
Like when
I don't believe in good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's because good and bad is a perspective, right? It's a personal perspective. We define what might be good for me might be bad for you, right?
Yeah.
So just explain a little bit what type of diplomatic relations you are referring.
Like when the two countries can, get together on that mutual agreement on with some consensus on some particular subject. Like if, for example, right now whatever happening is in the Gaza. if Pakistan has their own stance and some other country has their own stance, what if they can collaborate together diplomatically and they can take the voice
Palestine is not represented, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
Palestine no longer has a political voice, unfortunately. It's been silenced. I believe Hamas is not Palestine.
That's what the issue is.
It does not represent the 100% Palestinian voice. And that's unfortunate. And in response to your questions, I believe if two countries, because I guess your question was mostly on bilateral agreements, right?
Yes.
If two countries can sit down at a table and start discussing their issues, that's where the first step is being done. From that moment on, it really depends on how open those sides are to listen to each other and not impose on each other its own opinions. Just like one-on-one interhuman relations. It's just another level of it. But again, you have to be represented. You have to have a voice speaking for yourself. And unfortunately, the only voice that speaks for Palestine is the social media voice, the videos, the podcasts, the images that we see from there. There's no other voice speaking for Palestine right now, unfortunately.
What do you think, if we talk about the digital content, does it can make the difference for raising the voice for the people of Gaza or any other country which are going through this sort of conflicts or issues? Does it really matters? Or at least we have to play our part?
You brought in a very
hypothetical situation.
I would say like a double-faced sword. Because the digital content, the digitalization that we see today, this Internet of Things that has become way more than we expected in the beginning, I guess. It can be a tool that can help you, but it can also be a weapon. And digital content can be changed, right? Can be played with. So I guess it can be both things. It can help or it can harm at the same time. And my expertise is in terrorism and counterterrorism, I've witnessed the digital content being played on very different sides and very, unfortunately, very well played by the terrorist groups as well. So it is very unfortunate that, on one side, it can help Palestinians raise their voice, but you don't need just a voice to be heard. You need a common voice. You need someone to stand up there and say, this is me. This is me standing up for a country, speaking on behalf of a country, right? So while digital content can help, it can also provoke a lot of harm at the same time.
Well, beside all these official questions, Andreea, I would like to ask you, you have been in Pakistan. Have you tried the food over here?
Oh, yeah, it's very nice. You get it from a vegetarian, so yes, it's very good.
Have you visited the countryside, like the capital of?
Yes, we went to the village, the
Satpur village.
Yes, we went there one of these evenings, and it was beautiful. It was very peaceful, and I guess you feel the energies around. You feel when a place has been there for a very long time because you feel a mixture of energies around. I think it's beautiful. You have a beautiful country. You should be very proud of.
We are actually. And well, Andreea, I would like you to give the final message to the audience. They are listening to you, they are watching you, and all the youngsters out there actually who wants to work for the conflict resolution and all that.
This is very hard. I think this is one of the most challenging questions among the ones that you put up today. I think the key for this education, but a very different kind of education. An education that is more about morals, ethics, and not standards. It's more about critical thinking than theory. And it's more about asking questions and trying to listen to the answers instead of trying to put an argument up. So I would say everything that I say to my students before I begin any course I start with this. Critically think everything I say. Question everything I say. Because that's when I see that I make a change. Don't just take it for what it is. Critically ask why. Really, is it? How comes?
Thank you, Andreea, for your time. It was actually a pleasure having you in the studios.
Indeed.
Then with that, I would like to conclude this podcast with that wish. I hope and I pray that we leave the world which is going to be the better for the humans. With that, goodbye.